Welcome, curious minds. Today, we're taking a journey way back, over 2,500 years, actually.
Yeah, back to ancient Greece. Picture these, like, craggy cliffs.
Exactly, and this narrow mountain pass, you've got this colossal empire bearing down
One of the biggest the world had ever seen, really.
and facing them. Just a few hundred warriors, seemingly impossible odds.
You got it. We are diving deep into the Battle of Thermopylae.
Such an iconic moment in history.
It really is. We're talking 480 BCE, the place they called the Hot Gates. Apparently, there were thermal springs nearby.
Right. That makes sense. And it's King Xerxes, this massive Persian empire.
Up against the legendary 300 Spartans and their king, Leonidas.
So our mission today really is to cut through maybe some of the myths, the noise, and give you a shortcut.
Yeah, a way to really get what happened, why it mattered.
I want to pull out the key nuggets from the historical accounts, focus on the strategy.
Sheer guts involved.
And those moments that just stick with you, those aha moments that make this story so powerful. So let's get into it.
Okay, so first off, you have to understand the sheer scale of this Persian threat. I mean, it's staggering when you look at the sources.
Right. King Xerxes, he ruled this huge empire.
Huge doesn't even cover it, stretching all the way from Egypt, basically over to modern-day India.
And his motivation wasn't just expansion, was it? It was personal.
Very personal. His father, Darius, had tried to invade Greece 10 years earlier.
And got handed that really humiliating defeat at Marathon.
Exactly. So Xerxes, he was coming to finish the job, to, put Greece under the Persian thumb for good.
And the army he brought. The descriptions are just mind-boggling.
Some accounts say hundreds of thousands of soldiers. It might be an exaggeration, sure, but the point is...
It was enormous. An overwhelming force marching towards Greece.
Just think about the logistics of that. Feeding them, watering them, even moving them.
That's a really good point. That scale must have been a weakness too, right? Something the Greeks could maybe exploit.
Absolutely. They knew they couldn't win head-on against the whole thing. Which brings us to the Greeks themselves.
Because they weren't exactly known for playing nicely together, were they? Sparta, Athens, Corinth.
Not at all. Usually prone to infighting, squabbling over territory or influence. But this threat, this Persian invasion...
It was existential. It forced them together.
It really did. This unity was rare and, frankly, absolutely crucial. They knew defeat meant the end of their way of life.
So, facing this juggernaut, what was the plan? How do you even begin to counter that?
Well, it was actually quite a clever two-pronged strategy. Hold the Persians on land.
At Thermopylae.
Right. And simultaneously meet their navy at sea in the nearby straits of Artemisium.
And the goal of Thermopylae wasn't necessarily to win outright there.
No, not really. The main goal was to buy time, precious time. Delay the Persians long enough for the rest of Greece to properly mobilize its forces.
Which makes the choice of Thermopylae absolutely critical. Why there? What was so special about that pass?
Geography. Pure and simple. It was this incredibly narrow mountain pass.
Mountains on one side.
Sea on the other. A natural bottleneck. Some call it the perfect equalizer.
Because it didn't matter how many soldiers Xerxes had.
Exactly. Only a handful could actually fight at the front at any one time. It just completely neutralized that massive Persian numerical advantage.
So the Greek job was basically hold that line. Don't let them through.
Hold the line. And, who better to do that than the Spartans?
Right. Their whole culture was built around warfare discipline.
Absolutely legendary warrior society. But here's a fascinating detail from the sources.
The small number they sent.
Yeah. Why only 300 Spartans? Well, it was because of a major religious festival happening back home, the Carnea.
So religious law basically prevented the main army from marching out.
Pretty much. So King Leonidas could only take his personal bodyguard, essentially. But the way he chose them...
He specifically picked 300 men.
Each of whom already had a living son.
Wow. That really underscores it, doesn't it?
It screams awareness. They knew. They absolutely knew this was almost certainly a one-way trip, a sacrifice for Sparta's future.
So Leonidas and his 300-plus allies are waiting at the pass. Xerxes arrives with this colossal force.
And maybe Xerxes, thought he could just intimidate them. He sends a message, an offer.
Something like, surrender your weapons and you can live.
That's the gist of it. Lay down your arms. Submit.
And Leonidas' reply, just 2 words.
2 words that echo even today. Mollen Lab.
Which means...
Come and take him.
Chilling. Just absolutely defiant.
It perfectly captures the Spartan spirit, doesn't it? And it wasn't just Leonidas. There's that other great story.
But the arrows.
Yes. A Persian envoy is trying to impress, maybe scare them, boasts that their archers are so numerous their arrows will darken the sky.
And the Spartan Deinonychus, I think?
That's the one. Deinonychus just quips back, "Good, then we shall fight in the shade."
Huh. Incredible. That kind of dry wit under pressure.
It wasn't just attitude, though. The sources emphasize this defiance, this refusal to yield. It was Spartan law. It was policy. It was drilled into them from childhood.
And you see that discipline pay off immediately when the fighting starts, right? Day one.
Oh, absolutely. The Persians attack. Wave after wave crashes against the Greek line.
Like a tide against stone, I think one source says.
That's a great description. The Greek phalanx, especially the Spartans at the core, they just hold, spears thrusting, shields locked. The Persians can't break through.
Not even Xerxes' best troops, the immortals.
Even the immortals, his elite guard, they get thrown back, repelled. You can imagine Xerxes watching this, getting more and more frustrated.
Day two must have been more of the same, just relentless pressure.
Relentless. The assault continues, but the Greeks, particularly those Spartans, they just don't break. Their discipline, born from that brutal Agargi training.
It just holds firm.
It does. And the sources suggest Xerxes is becoming furious, restless. This tiny force is holding up his entire invasion.
They were using the terrain brilliantly too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Rotating troops, maybe even feigning retreats.
Yes, exactly. Some accounts mention tactical retreats to draw the Persians further into the narrow pass, into the kill zone, before turning and attacking again. Very clever tactics.
But then everything changes.
Yeah.
The serpent in the garden moment.
Yeah. Betrayal. It always seems to come down to betrayal in these stories, doesn't it?
Who was it? And what did he do?
A local Greek named Ephialtes, under the cover of night, apparently tempted by a reward from Xerxes.
He reveals a secret.
He reveals the Achilles heel of the Greek position, a hidden path, a sort of goat trail over the mountains.
What goes around the main pass?
Exactly. It bypasses the bottleneck and allows the Persians to get behind the Greek line, to flank them.
That's devastating. Game over for the strategy.
Completely. Once the Greeks are surrounded, it's hopeless.
So Leonidas finds out about this betrayal at dawn. What does he do? This must have been an agonizing decision.
It must have been. But his choice speaks volumes about his leadership. He tells the main body of the Greek army, the allies, to retreat.
Get out while they still can.
Yes. Save themselves. Save the bulk of the army to fight another day. He knew holding the pass now was impossible. A suicide mission for everyone if they all stayed.
But he stays with his 300 Spartans.
He stays, and crucially, he wasn't entirely alone in that decision.
Right, the others who chose to remain.
Around 700 Thespians made the same choice, stood their ground. And about 400 Thebans, though their situation is a bit more complex according to Herodotus, maybe held somewhat against their will initially, but they fought too.
So not just Spartans. Other Greeks chose glory or duty over survival.
It shows the power of Leonidas' example, doesn't it? Some chose to make that ultimate sacrifice alongside him.
That final morning, knowing the Persians are coming over the mountain path, knowing the end is certain, what was the mood like?
The sources say they didn't mourn, they didn't despair, they prepared.
Prepared for death.
Prepared to sell their lives dearly. They actually moved out from the narrowest part of the pass, met the Persians in a slightly wider area.
Took the fight to them one last time.
Exactly. Went on the offensive. And the fighting is described as just brutal, visceral.
Spears shatter.
Swords break.
They fight with daggers, fists.
With fists, with rocks, with pure grit, anything they had left. A final, furious explosion of defiance.
And then Leonidas falls.
Yes. The king goes down. And even then, his men, they fight like lions over his body.
Refusing to let the Persians take it.
It's an incredible image of loyalty, but eventually they're just overwhelmed, pushed back to a small hillock within the pass.
Surrounded on all sides.
Completely encircled, and Xerxes, watching this, possibly enraged by the cost, the defiance, he gives the order.
The archers.
Yeah, he tells the archers to just fire relentlessly, no more hand-to-hand, just end it.
Arrows that blot out the sun. That phrase again.
It must have seemed like it. A final deadly rain, and the 300 Spartans, the Thespians, the Thebans who remain.
They die to the last man.
To the last man.
Such a devastating end. But not the end of the story. What was the impact? I mean, Xerxes won the battle, right? He marched on.
He did. He marched south, and he did burn Athens, which had been evacuated. So tactically, Thermopylae was a Persian victory, but strategically. and morally.
It was something else entirely.
Completely. That stand, the sacrifice of Leonidas and his men, it didn't crush Greek spirit. It did the opposite. It electrified Greece.
It inspired them, didn't demoralize them.
Inspired unity, not fear. It became this rallying cry, this symbol of defiance against impossible odds. It showed that Persians could be beaten, could be resisted, even if it cost everything.
And that delay, however short, bought that crucial time.
Crucial time, yes. And it created this huge surge in Greek morale and resolve.
So how did that play out? How did this electrifying effect translate into actual victories?
Well, a few months later, the Greek navy, particularly the Athenians, lured the Persian fleet into the narrow straits of Salamis.
Another bottleneck.
Yes, another brilliant use of geography. And they absolutely devastate the Persian fleet, a massive turning point.
And Xerxes loses much of his naval power.
He does. He heads back to Persia, leaves his general Mardonius in charge of the land army.
And then the final act.
A year later, at the Battle of Plataea, the now united Greek city-states field a large, determined army.
And they crush the remaining Persians on land.
Crush them decisively. The invasion is over. The threat is ended.
So the tide completely turned, and you can trace it back.
You really can trace that spark, that beginning of the turnaround, back to that hopeless, defiant last stand at Thermopylae.
It's an incredible story, and it's one that's been told and retold for centuries.
Oh, absolutely. Historians like Herodotus, who's our main source, really, poets, artists.
And Hollywood, of course.
Yeah.
The movie 300.
Yeah, well, 300. Look, it takes massive liberties, giant monsters, ridiculous physics, the abs.
Right, not exactly a documentary.
Not even close. But, and this is important, strip away the fantasy elements. At its core, the basic story is real.
A king really did lead his men into what they knew was certain death.
To delay a tyrant, yes. They fought knowing they would die. And in doing that, giving the rest of Greece that chance, they really did help change the course of history.
There's a monument there today, isn't there, at Thermopylae?
There is. And it has this incredibly simple, powerful inscription from the poet Simonides.
Go tell the Spartans, stranger passing by.
That here, obedient to their laws, we lie.
Chilling. Obedient to their laws.
It gets right to the heart of it, doesn't it? They weren't fighting for loot or conquest. They were fighting for their way of life, for law, for freedom as they understood it, for legacy.
They died in the battle.
But in that sacrifice, they became immortal. Not, literally, but in memory, in the story.
It really makes you think about what courage means.
Absolutely. Thermopylae is the stark reminder, I think, that courage isn't necessarily about not being afraid.
It's the will to stand up anyway.
It's the will to stand, yeah. Especially when standing means falling, when you know the cost and you choose to pay it for something bigger than yourself.
It's just profound. This whole deep dive, looking at the strategy, the sacrifice, it really shows the power of that stand against everything.
Even in tactical defeat, there was this incredible victory of spirit, of purpose, that resonated through history.
So maybe something for you, our listeners, to think about as you go about your day.
Yeah, how do acts like that, acts of just extraordinary courage, even when they end in defeat on the surface, how do they actually shape what comes next?
And with that idea, standing when standing means falling, what might that mean for you in your own challenges, big or small?
Worth pondering.
Definitely. Until next time, stay curious.
And stay brave.